an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Gravity Falls, Season 1, Episode 12, Summerween. In this episode, obviously these writers really wanted to have a Halloween episode, and so they decided to make this town particularly awesome in that they celebrate Halloween not once, but twice per year. And I'm pretty sure that we can all agree we would like to live in Gravity Falls just for that. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Melanie for commissioning this episode. I started a little late today because for some reason Crowdcast just did not want to open. The website was not responding to me, but here I am, a little late. Sorry about that. And it's funny because I had mentioned when I started this that Melanie had asked me if I wanted to cover 2 episodes per podcast. And I said, sure, if you think that's enough time, they're short episodes, and she was like, okay, I think I'll do that for most of them. And then here and there, I'm going to have an episode that I want you to just talk about only that. And it's funny because when I first started doing Spoil Me and people were commissioning shows that weren't, 45 and 50 minutes long, I kind of wondered, how am I going to be able to fill an hour talking about this one pretty short TV episode? Well, as it turns out, I love to talk, and I can just do it, and it's really not a big deal. And then when I was watching Gravity Falls, and it being a pretty lighthearted cartoon, I was kind of like, well, when she commissions just one episode, I wonder how I'll be able to fill the hour for that. And this is the first one that other than the very, very first that she commissioned, which was a special case because the first episode of anything I can talk for a while about just what I'm expecting and what I had thought I was getting versus what I got once I actually watched. But this being an episode about Summerween makes it so clear why she was like, no, you're going to need a whole episode for this. Because if you are not in the Crowdcast, you probably cannot tell that I have a lot of Halloween decorations on the wall behind me as we speak. I am one of those basic bitches who just loves Halloween. I love pumpkin spice shit. I love apple cider. There is a mug at Joanne Fabric right now that I saw that said 'tis the season to be basic, and I really, really want it because that speaks to me. So this episode, like I said in the intro, this is obviously a town that having a Halloween episode feels uber appropriate. You definitely should do this. But they're supposed to be kids that are here for summer break, so they didn't really have a good reason to do that. So having it be a Summerween thing because the town loves it so much, I really enjoy both the idea that this is a thing that an entire town would agree on in the first place, but I also think if any town would agree to do it, it would be Gravity Falls because there's so much weird shit going on here all the time. And all of these people probably have a bit of they probably do enjoy the weirdness and would be also huge fans of Halloween. And I really love the opening where there is a specifically Summerween superstore. And it, guys, it's really interesting to me how much America specifically is an outlier in terms of the way that we celebrate holidays. We just get so fucking intense with it. Halloween is a very particular one, but even Christmas, it's not that other countries don't celebrate. It's not that they don't decorate. It's not that they don't have shops filled with specifically Christmas themed items, but the U.S. is a machine when it comes to just pumping out all of our candies, all of our toys, all of our weird little accessories, plastic forks and knives, paper napkins and plates. different like designs for stockings every year. Like everything turns red and green. Everything turns red and green for like a month and a half. And similarly at Halloween, black and orange everywhere. And it is just not as much of a thing in a lot of other countries. They do celebrate Halloween. Plenty of people in England do. But when my friend who I worked with for a while, she was from Wales, and she came over and had her first Halloween here in the US, and she was floored. She could not believe. She was like, yeah, we dress up, but it's not like this. When we took her to one of these sort of Halloween superstores, the fact that there was literally a store that only functions for Halloween items, and that's it, for like 1 month out of the year, 2 months out of the year, that's all they do. She could not wrap her brain around it. And it didn't occur to me to really think of it that way until she mentioned how bananas of a business model that is. And I had to stop and be like, you know what? That is pretty crazy. Like, because we all, most of us have a Halloween superstore somewhere near us. I keep saying superstore, and I hope that you guys can get used to that, because obviously I'm not going to be able to fix that. And they always were like, for my neighborhood where I'm in Texas right now, it always winds up in a different place because they take over abandoned, like, strip mall storefronts. So last year there was one very close by, and that storefront has since been purchased by Skechers, I think. So now they're in this like weird outlet section of our mall, the dying mall that is nearby. And honestly, I can think of no spookier fucking place for a Halloween superstore than a dying mall. Like, malls are sort of dying off for a lot of people in their towns anyway. But the one near us literally was featured in a bullet points listicle about how to tell that your mall is dying. It was actually, every photo in that listicle was from the mall near my house. And it's called Midway Mall. It's in Sherman, Texas. And it is the creepiest place in the entire world. And I frequently have thought what a genius location it would be to do one of those like spooky Halloween walkthroughs, because you'd barely need to do anything. And it would be absolutely terrifying. There's no air conditioning in there right now. So like there's a couple individual stores that are left, and you walk into the store and it's air conditioned, but the outside corridor area, it's not. All of the stuff in the food court, completely abandoned. All of the like appliances have been ripped out of the walls. So there's these gaping holes with wiring and everything showing. Tons of like chipped like fronts on signs, or signs that are like hanging. Places that they didn't even like clean it out completely when they left. So like the grill has been pulled down and locked, so you can't get inside, but you can see all of this stuff that's still just laying there, like as if it had been left in storage. And in one of the photos, they're like from the listicle, because this is what I just described is all stuff I have personally seen. In the listicle, there was a photo in which they were like, is that a body? And I know what you're thinking. No, of course it's a mannequin. You're in a mall. Guys, if you see this photo, and I'm going to try and find this listicle and share it with you guys, the image displays something laying in a position that a mannequin, I feel, would have trouble doing, because most of them are not flexible particularly. Like, you can move a joint here and there to make their arm go up or their legs stick out or whatever, but this is definitely looking like either a body, or maybe somebody like homeless came in and like fell asleep and they just didn't wake up when this person came in and was taking photos. But so yeah, this year our Halloween store is in that mall, and I kind of want to get myself in the spirit to, and that's, by the way, the name of the store is Spirit. Those of you who aren't out here in the US and don't know what we're talking about, it says Spirit Halloween Stores in huge like black and orange letters, and there's this like hooded figure that's sort of like, prowling and looming over like the letters, and that's their sign. It's a big like drapey sort of hanging thing. because of course they can't get like permanent signage for these stores. So anyway, when we pull up and Uncle Stan stops, and I didn't even notice, I don't think, before that his car says Stanley Mobile, and on the side of his car it says El Diablo, which is just perfect. But yeah, it's called Summerween Superstore, and they, like, even the bat is reminiscent of the Spirit, sort of like the positioning of the figure from Spirit stores. It's very clearly a ripoff of that. And his kids don't know what Summerween is, and they're just kind of like, what are we doing? But once they find out, they are all about it, because apparently they are huge fans of Halloween, and they do a ton of twin themed costumes, which we find out about later. And obviously that is the best, and anybody who has twins, I hope that you do this. I understand if they want to be their own things and they don't constantly want to be grouped together, but like, what an opportunity. And Stan is surprisingly on board with this for the sake of it. I kind of expected Stan to be doing something that was going to raise money somehow, you know, like maybe he was going to try and build a Halloween walkthrough to like charge people to come through it and be really cheap about it. But it turns out that Stan just really likes Halloween also, and kind of prides himself in being able to scare the local kids really effectively. And I kind of really enjoy Stan having something like this that he likes because of a pride thing, where it's just him trying to like do this for fun and satisfy himself that he is still the master of fright, as it says above the mirror next to the door. Oh, Melanie's here. Hi, Melanie. Melanie, I started late, so I've only been doing this about 10 minutes because I couldn't get Crowdcast to open for me, but welcome. So they are going into this like maze of, you know, yellow plastic tablecloths and candy bowls with skulls in them. And the skull candy bowls in particular are delighting Seuss, who keeps pushing down on them and wanting them to tell him the same jokes over and over again. And he is really irritating one of the store clerks, which, guys, have any of you ever worked a place that had toys or accessories like this that make a certain noise and people push on them or press a button and it never ends all day long? Because I worked somewhere we didn't have this sort of stuff permanently. We had a display that had one thing that made a noise, and we had it one time. And I thought I was going to lose my mind. It was so relentless. And the batteries, like, winding down were the only thing that saved us. And it's the sort of thing that, like, as a customer, if there's something that's like, press me and see what I say, and you press it and nothing happens, you're like, oh, they should replace the batteries. Meanwhile, the people who work there are like, fucking thank God. And are you kidding me? I'm not touching batteries. Absolutely not. So I love this moment with this cashier just being like, dude, can you stop with that? She is just obviously not really interested in this job. She's doing this because she has to. And everybody is the worst. Meanwhile, Grunkle Stan is grabbing these, like, fucking drums, like 40-gallon drums of fake blood. I would have loved to see what he actually does with this, because in this moment, it's just for the laugh of just how much fake blood he's planning to use. But we don't actually see this, like, being much of a thing at, like, when the kids show up at his house. There's not blood pouring down the steps or all, like, dripping off the eaves of the roof or anything like that. But clearly he's very into this. And I really, like, the whole lead up to how, like, it turns out that there's not pumpkins, that they're watermelons. And guys, this is genuinely a thing. Like, this feels like it's played for a joke in this moment, but there are 100% watermelon jack-o'-lanterns. I see them on, like, different websites, and I have actually seen a couple outside of somebody's house who was having a party and they were doing something like this. So yeah, it's like a joke, but it's definitely not a joke, you know, and people who love Halloween do get extra with it like this. I know I do. I personally, part of what I love about Halloween is really the cold weather and the feeling of like the crackle in the air as you're sort of, the trees begin to get a little bit more bare. And so for me, doing a Halloween thing in the middle of summer doesn't really hold any appeal in the way that a fall Halloween does. That's not to say I wouldn't be down if there was a whole town that did this, but it's not something that when it's like hot outside that it's easy for me to get in the spirit. For example, if I were living in Connecticut, the decorations behind me would have gone up on September 1st. As it was, September 1st, it was 97 degrees outside here. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. Like, it just felt so ridiculous. And not only that, but September 1st, we literally spent the day at the beach. Like, there's just, you know? So I just don't think I would be able to, like, feel the same way about it. Plus, a lot of the stuff about Halloween that I enjoy, like a lot of the foods and things, hot cider and whatnot, you're not going to want that in the middle of summer. But that's, again, not to say that if other people weren't like doing this and getting really like committed to it all over town, that I wouldn't feel the exact same way. So they go like running out of there with all this stuff. And when Mabel asks Grunkle Stan if he paid for everything, he says, of course. And we go back to the cashier who is opening. I love the detail on this show. It's not just counterfeit money. It's not just counterfeit money that has Stan's picture on it that says Stanley Bucks. It is a piece of like lined notebook paper with the red margin line that's torn and ripped at the edges. And that is what he drew in pencil, Stan Bucks. And it just says Stan Bucks, it's money. It's real money on it. Like, it's the equivalent of like Ron Swanson, who writes in, he's like, I have a permit to do this, to one of the police that comes in when he's going to grill in the park. And he just hands the police officer a piece of paper. And when he opens it, all it says, and it's not in like bolded letters, it's not, all it says in small, like Arial font in one corner is, I can do what I want. Ron. That's it. And that's kind of what Grunkle Stan has done here, except money. Yeah, you know what? I kind of love this. And like, as she's saying, I hate Summerween, he backs into a foam pole and knocks it over and deflates their giant watermelon jack-o'-lantern. So that's a great start. I am here for it. And we wind up going to, when we have like this moment at their house, it starts off feeling so exciting because everybody is on board with Summerween. Everybody is like, oh, this is a weird thing that this town does, but you know what? Yeah, I'm here for it, you know? And then we run into the thing. And I don't know how many of you have experienced the moment where you are embarrassed that you still do a thing that people around you believe is for kids. And kids don't know it at the time when it happens. But this is an experience that you will run into over and over again in your life regarding a lot of different things. And that is discovering that you are too old for something or that something isn't for you anymore and you're not ready. The understanding that I had as a kid was that as you got older and you entered each new phase of your life, that you knew you were entering that phase and that you were ready and okay with it and entering it, understanding what was happening. I had no idea that it just creeps up on you and you don't get a say in it. You don't get to like decide, no, I'm not doing this. Like, you can refuse and be in denial about where you are in your life. You can certainly do that, but that doesn't change the perception of you being stuck that other people are going to have of you. And I always kind of thought that, like, by the time I got older, like, and I'm not talking about older where I am now, I'm talking about older, like, you know, probably in my 60s, gone through menopause, really heading towards a place where I'm going to be retiring. I had always thought that by the time I got there, I would be ready and knowing that it's time to retire. And I'm realizing now that's not necessarily going to be true at all. And one of the first things is Santa Claus, and talking to kids at school and finding out that a lot of them no longer believe in Santa, and you, for whatever reason, still do. Either you just are like me, who I just never suspected that my parents were just lying to me. I would just never. And also, I love magical, like, fairy tale type stuff, and this just was 100% in my wheelhouse, and I did not want to let it go. And when I found out that a lot of kids in my class were, like, considered themselves too old to believe in Santa, I was really, like, unsure how to proceed. It was the sort of thing that I was like, I get the feeling that they're laughing at me for believing in this, but I feel bad for them that they don't believe in this. And I really did. And it wasn't like I feel bad for them that, oh, they don't have their, like, whimsy anymore. It was nothing that advanced. It was more like, oh, isn't it a shame that they're that, like, that they have got a grown-up mindset? Bummer. And it really felt like they had bought into a lie the grown-ups were telling, rather than that they had found out the truth about a lie the grown-ups were, like, in on. I didn't feel like, oh, they figured out the conspiracy. I felt like, oh, they're the dummy who doesn't believe, like in movies, you know, because in kids' movies, there's always the thing with, like, you just have to believe in somebody who's real cynical and doesn't believe. And eventually, of course, they're proved wrong. Santa really does exist. The Great Pumpkin really, like, whatever. And it's a testament to how much I bought into that I completely disregarded the possibility that Santa wasn't real. It didn't even occur to me that these kids were right when they said this. All I really absorbed was the knowledge that they were amused at the fact that I still believed. And we're talking like third grade at this point. And I decided I wasn't going to just stop believing. I just was going to let go of talking to them about it, was how I decided to handle it, which honestly is a pretty smart move looking back on it now. I was just like, well, if you're going to be a dick, I just won't talk to you about it because you obviously have lost the magic, and that's really sad. And I'm never going to lose the magic because I am eventually definitely going to meet Santa and I need to be ready. So, all right. Halloween is another one. Easter sometimes, depending on how big a deal the Easter Bunny is, but it wasn't such a big deal for me in my life. I kind of never really believed in the Easter Bunny the way I did in Santa. But Halloween, the very first time that I remember somebody being surprised that I still went trick-or-treating, I think I was like maybe 8th grade. And when you really think about 8th grade, I must have been like around these kids' age, like 12 probably. 'Cause I was maybe even like younger, maybe 11 or 10. But because I was like a year younger than almost everybody in my classes in school. So I try and think of what like the average age is, and I down my age about a year. And there were kids that, it wasn't even that I realized that people weren't trick-or-treating or like who were also in my class, because they still were. It was more that adults started to say things like, you guys still trick-or-treat, in response to us talking about how we were going to dress up this year or whatever. And that was the part that, again, I just ignored it because I was like, oh, these bummer adults who have no sense of fun are trying to ruin our night and whatever. Of course we're still trick-or-treating. We're fucking children, you psychopath. Like, it just, I completely steamrolled right past it. The thing that actually kind of like got me stopping and going, really? Was when I was talking to some of the boys in the class and I found out that they did go trick-or-treating, but they didn't dress up. They would like wear their jeans and a sweatshirt and they would just buy a mask. And that was it. And they would just pull a mask over their faces and then go to doors. And that was a thing that they started doing around 13 and kept doing until like 15, 16. And there really was a time as an adult when I was handing out candy where kids that age were coming to my door, and I started to realize what the adults had been thinking when they said that to us as, you know, as children, because they were perceiving this sort of like, we just want free candy and we're putting forth no effort and you don't have the heart to say no to us. So we're just going to take advantage as long as we can. And it's honestly such a shame that we have this cutoff for trick-or-treating, because it's a really good way to have, like, give people something to do that's very different, that's pretty creative, and that is, like, involved in the community and not, you know, not just, like, going into the woods with your friends and finding an adult to buy you a six-pack and getting fucking wasted and doing stupid shit. Which I did not do, but I hear was like a very popular pastime for a lot of people in high school. It was just like getting illicit alcohol and getting drunk in the woods or in a park or somewhere. And I wish that we weren't so discouraging, both about participating at all and about the idea of dressing up, because I really got the feeling that these kids didn't dress up not because they were even lazy, but because they knew that caring too much about a costume was going to get them made fun of. And what a shame, you know? Like, it's a bummer that you reach a point in our life where the fun stuff is what, like, draws bullies or in general, like, marks you as uncool in one way or another. Even if nobody else is really giving you a hard time about it, you know that the effect it's going to have is to make you look like a baby. So what goes on here with Dipper is just really typical in terms of him coming to an understanding about something a little ahead of somebody that he's close to. In this case, it's his actual twin sister. But, you know, Dipper is much more eager to grow up than Mabel is. Mabel, like, she's much more like me when I was a kid, fully embracing the magic and the tradition. You know, that's really something for her. And that's also a thing for me, is like, it's sort of funny because when you think of doing stuff traditionally, oftentimes the image that conjures is somebody who's very conservative. And for me, tradition has nothing to do with that. Tradition is simply a comforting ritual that really makes it official that it's this time of year, that we're transitioning into a new season, a new holiday, and brings everybody together to, like, pass the torch sometimes to a new generation as well. If you are an adult whose kids are beginning to grow old enough to, like, do a thing that you have been in charge of up until now, there's really a lot of, like, beautiful moments like that I feel are important to making life what it is, which is a journey forward into different phases and discovering new things and experiencing new things. And without tradition, there really cannot be those sorts of, like, milestones. Because if it's just random crap happening all the time, you don't notice when a change happens, because change is always happening, because nothing is ever really a routine or a habit. So I really love milestones and markers, not only because of, like, you know, the scrapbookability of it, but also because mentally it makes you feel like you're really doing something in life, that you're not necessarily, like, accomplishing something in this way that people talk about where they're like, I'm leaving my mark on the world. It's more about, I know that I have, like, kind of reached the end of this part of my life. And rather than feeling sad just because it's over, I am also beginning this other thing. And this is new and interesting. And I feel like as adults, we really start to crave that, because you get that all the time as you grow up in elementary school, transitioning into middle and high school. You have, every birthday is a huge celebration right up until your 21st birthday. Changing schools, moving up, then going to college. All of these are huge transitions that are very important in our culture. And then after college and getting a job, those milestones really don't happen very much anymore unless you stay in school and get your graduate degree, get your master's degree. And even then, a lot of people don't celebrate those milestones the way they did when you were a kid. Of course, it's really understandable. People have their own lives by then. They feel like you're an adult and that you don't need that. And the thing is, like, you might not need it the way that you did when you were a kid, but I firmly believe that we all need it in some way to kind of put a period at the end of a sentence and really feel like, okay, you know what? I completed this phase of my life. And, the only one that is left later on in life is getting married and having a wedding, which a lot of people don't have any interest in getting married, or it doesn't work out for them that they get married. And so, it's understandable. A lot of people talk about like, why do people get so wedding obsessed? And I really think that's part of it, is that we are starved for this sort of event at a certain part in our lives, and we just want another ceremony like this. And that is a huge factor for me, I know. So anyway, I just fucking really sympathize with Dipper in this. Like, it's so easy to see him as the bad guy who's being really weak and like letting all the older kids tell him how to be. But it's a really difficult thing when you realize that you don't know about the way something changes until you're in the middle of it. Like, it's clearly a surprise to him when Wendy and Rob, is that his name again? I always forget his name, are kind of like making fun of, oh, you're not trick-or-treating, are you? They make it seem like it's such a foregone conclusion that he would be trick-or-treating. Absolutely not. Of course not, is what Wendy says. And that, I think, more than anything, if I were Dipper, would be kind of what bothered me, is that I am so unaware that this is something that I'm expected to give up pretty soon. And not only am I unaware of it, but you guys are so sure that I'm too old for it, that it doesn't even enter your mind that I'm trick-or-treating, because I'm in your head so too old for it that it's just out of the question. When to me, I had no idea. And so he tries to pretend that he isn't going to be trick-or-treating because he's like aware he's too old and no. And he really lets Mabel down, because she is aware they're approaching the age of being too old for it. And because of that, is clinging to it more than ever, because she knows they're going to have to give this up. And she winds up having the same sort of reaction when she finds out what Dipper's been doing as he has here, where she's like, wow, I knew we were getting there. I didn't know it had already happened and that this was already our last one. And I feel so bad for both of them, because they're like, who decides that? What arbitrary line is there that we have said, okay, from here on, you're too old for it? I feel like you should be able to trick or treat right through the end of high school. And then you go on to college and you're not at home. And that really is, for me, why? Because you're likely going to be like staying in a dorm or staying somewhere else. And you're going to have like a lot of people your own age around you, and you're going to want to actually like throw a party, because that's going to be the first time in your life that you guys get to throw a party on your own terms without parents or whatever. So for me, then it feels natural to not be doing it in college because of the way your life is changing. But I really feel like we should just let teenagers like fucking do this, and just, who cares? Like, honestly, it also makes it a little bit safer for little kids if there are more people out. And having teenagers participating and like, not feeling weird about having to take their little brothers and sisters trick-or-treating because they're also going, why not? So yeah, it's really like a moment. I just feel really bad for Dipper and how unsure of himself he suddenly becomes. So they invite him to this party, and he decides that he is going to pretend to be sick and go to this party instead. And so the whole night, which we'll get to, he's like just trying to beat the clock and get done with the trick-or-treating in time to still go to the party. And all I want to know is what he planned on saying to Mabel, because you don't tell her you're sick and then just not be there when she gets home from trick-or-treating, or you don't tell her you're sick and then just like get up out of your bed in the middle of the night and go out there. Like, really, Dipper, what did you think you were going to do to excuse going off like to this party and coming home super late? Did you think she wasn't going to know? So there is this wonderful introduction of Mabel's two friends whose names I have already forgotten. But one of them is like a little like one of those candy bullseyes that spins in the middle, you know. Candy and Grenda. I am so sweet I could eat myself. And Grenda says, "Hello, Mr. Pines," with her voice. And he's like, "Wow, that's, do you have a cold?" And she's like, "What? What do you mean?" Meanwhile, Grunkle Stan is dressed up as Dracula and looks immaculate. Honestly, perfect costume, Grunkle Stan. Even with the glasses, it still works. I love it the most. And we find out later that what Mabel and Dipper were supposed to be is peanut butter and jelly, which, yes, is the most adorable thing in the entire world. So we get our bad luck here. Oh, and oh my God, I almost forgot about Waddles, who's dressed up as a businessman in the front. It total party in the back. But he is the cutest thing. And there's a whole like ending bit over the credits where they're like making memes out of him. And it's just perfection. And I want a pet pig real, real bad. So this is when Dipper comes downstairs and says that he's not feeling well and tries to like get out of the whole thing. And somebody comes and knocks on the door and wants candy. And he slams the door in their face. And they knock again. And he like opens it again and tells them to just go to another house. And this is, for those who are not aware, very, very similar to the film Trick or Treat. I don't have any, understanding at all. Like, I haven't checked on the date of the release of this episode versus the date of the release of Trick or Treat. But I am pretty sure Trick or Treat came out before this. I'm not trying to say they ripped it off. I'm not even trying to say like it's an homage or supposed to be like a spoof of it or anything. This is like Trick or Treat is based on the folklore of Halloween. So it makes sense that, more than one place has decided to do a riff on this concept. But basically the idea is that if you do not show the proper Halloween spirit, this thing, some creature, is going to find you and do something to punish you. Those of you who have not seen Trick or Treat, it is a masterpiece. Like, it is one of the best Halloween-specific scary movies ever made. And it is just the atmosphere of it, the variety of stories told within it, and the style in which it's filmed are all really memorable. And I highly suggest watching it for Halloween, but like wait until it's closer to Halloween, because you want to really be in the spirit when you watch this, because it's just so heavy on lots and lots of like pumpkin imagery and trick-or-treat imagery and like Halloween parades and all of this stuff. It's kind of follows 4, I think, or 5 different people's evenings in this small town and what is happening to them or what they are doing on Halloween. And amongst it all is a creature. And in Gravity Falls, it is the Summerween like trickster, who is very tall and gangly and has this like weirdo tiny little like jack-o'-lantern mask and has the body of like a fat spider, but these long gangly legs, and it winds up at first it's got like 4 arms and legs like a normal person, but then it has 6 later. I kind of wanted it to pop an extra 2 and have a full-on 8 and be a spider, but it never quite reached that point. Meanwhile, in Trick or Treat, the creature is called Sammy for Samhain, Samhain for those who pronounce it incorrectly. And he watches the people in this town to make sure that they are upholding the traditions. And if they don't, he fucking straight up murders them. And it is done in a variety of fantastic and very vivid and specific ways that are super Halloween-y. So this creature is extremely similar, except that he is like the opposite in terms of looks. In Trick or Treat, Sammy is very short, child-sized, like meant to sort of look like a little kid in a costume, except a little kid in one of those, like, you know, the costumes that you guys see in photos from like the 20s and 30s that are the most terrifying costumes you've ever seen in your lives. Like, we all talk about how, like, you know, the good old days with certain things. Like, there's always this sort of vibe about, in the past, certain holidays used to be more epic in this way or that way. Halloween used to be way scarier, in my opinion. And the costume that Sammy wears is reminiscent of that sort of look. And he is very, very short and kind of plump and drags a sack behind him that is allegedly full of candy. And this creature is just super duper tall. Looks almost like, you know, it's taller than an adult for sure at the door, which is what makes it so funny when Dipper just slams the door in his face. And then eventually when Dipper rejects him again, he like loses his temper, and Mabel has come to the door to sort of apologize. And this thing says, "You have insulted me, and for this you must pay with your lives." And as it says that, it leans forward, and it's this tiny little adorable jack-o'-lantern mask that's like on a little elastic string around it. Like, it is super, it's just a great moment. But then when he comes in, it's changed to green. The color has completely changed. And I don't know if that's meant to be that, like, when it turns from scary to angry, it changes color or what. But it says, you know, because Mabel says, "Oh, what a cute little mask. You're a funny guy, aren't you?" And it comes inside and says, "Funny, am I?" And here comes little Gorny, who's a pirate, dressed up as a pirate. And the trickster grabs him around the head with one hand, picks him up, and straight up tosses him in his mouth. That's it. It's just like, it takes a second, and Gorny barely has time to say, "Remember me," before he gets swallowed. And it is hysterical. And he basically tells these kids, the only way to avoid this is if you can collect 500 pieces of candy by the end of the night, bring it to me before the last jack-o'-melon goes out, and I will let you live. And meanwhile, all the kids are like, "Are you kidding? 500? There's no way that's happening." And he's just like, "Well, if you don't do it, then I guess you die." And then, like, leaps vertically up onto the roof and crawls away in the creepiest way. So at this point, of course, as much as he'd been trying to avoid it, Dipper has to go trick-or-treating with them because he's pretty much responsible for this thing being angry at them because of his shitty attitude. So there is a fly in here that is just freaking driving me batty. So they go to the first house, and Dipper, again, has not at all even attempted to put on a costume. And this, like, I was really sympathetic with Dipper with the realization that maybe he's too old for Halloween and that people are judging him for it. But once you get to this point, and this thing has attacked you and eaten a child in front of you, and you're still not willing to just put on a fucking mask or something, dude, I'm not really feeling bad for you, because you need to do something. Come on. And unsurprisingly, they aren't getting the candy that they should get. This weird moment of them coming to the first house and not getting enough candy. It's the Lazy Susan that Grunkle Stan had a crush on. And she looks down the line of all of these kids and names what she thinks they each are. And it's a series of baffling assessments that I don't even know what to do or why you would ever think that. She calls the little girl who's dressed up as a candy like a squeegee or something. Let's see. I'm trying to find where it is. Okay, so first these kids come up. Oh, and she's got cats all over her. And I thought that was like her costume, but those are actual cats. And she's dressed up as a ball of yarn, which is the most adorable thing. And she's like dumping a bag of candy into these first kids' bags. But then the next kids, when they come up, is everybody in costume? Chimney sweep, elephant man, squeegee, ant farm. She says ant farm? I really would love to know if the writers decided what's the weirdest thing she could possibly think this is, or if they were like, we're just going to name random shit that has nothing to do with their costumes, and that will be the joke, that she's so far off. And then she gets to Dipper and asks him what he's supposed to be, and he says, actually, I'm not dressed up in anything. We're in kind of a hurry here. And goes through and drops each of them one candy, except for Dipper, and their candy is real bad. Let's talk about loser candy. Because this episode, the actual plot is not that deep. But everything about this is ingrained in American child psyche. Loser candy. We all know what loser candy is. Later on, it turns out that the creature that they are fighting is made of this candy. And he talks about black licorice, that chocolate that has that white powder on it. You know what I'm talking about? For those who aren't aware what that is, that's called a bloom. And chocolate gets a bloom when it gets heated and then cools again. That chocolate is fine to eat. There's nothing wrong with it, but it is out of temper. And temper, all that is that the chocolate crystals in the structure, the molecular structure of the chocolate, were heated to the proper temperature so that when it cooled, it got that glassy, perfect, even finish and a snap. And that's part of the reason why when chocolate is bloomed, it often doesn't snap. It just sort of bends. It's because the crystals in the structure of the chocolate are not aligned properly. And so it doesn't have the perfect structure. And tempering chocolate is real fucking tricky. And chocolate coming out of temper, it's very easy to have that happen. All that needs to happen is for your stock to get left in a really hot room and then put back out on the floor. But it's understandable when people see that, and if they don't know what that is and that it's harmless, they are not going to want to eat it because they think something's wrong with it. I mean, it doesn't look nice, and that's regular, ordinary, decent candy that can happen too. Black licorice is the devil's shit. Literally, I think if there is a devil and he takes a shit, what he shits out is black licorice. In my opinion, that comes out of the asshole of Satan himself. Then there are things like cow tails, which are just baffling to me that anybody would give those to children. I know it's supposed to be cute and whimsical that it's a cow's tail. No. Kids don't really love whimsical with candy unless it's candy they're familiar with being put into a whimsical sort of container, or something is done with it that makes it different than the ordinary. But don't fucking give them a candy they've never heard of that's whimsical almost ever, because it's just going to be what the fuck is this off-brand shit? And Mary Janes are another thing that they still fucking make, and I genuinely want to know where this manufacturer is and how, like, who purchases this stuff, because you cannot get to the end of a Halloween evening and not have Mary Janes somewhere in that bag of candy. Where do they come from? I don't understand. Nobody likes these. Stop it. And guys, I don't care. Don't come at me and try and be like, actually, I like Mary Janes. Shut up. No. If we don't all just take a stand against this is just going to keep happening. We all need to gather together and unite against these candies. Smarties, Smarties are fine for what they are, but they're not Halloween candy. Oh, can we all agree on that? Smarties are just like a weird. They're basically Pez, but like less fun. I don't understand the appeal. The only time that Smarties are at all okay is when there's like a little hole through the middle and they're made into candy necklaces. That's fine. But when they're just like a bunch of tubes and they fall open when you unwrap them, it's just like a disaster. I don't like Tootsie Rolls. I don't despise them the way I do certain candies, but they really are kind of baffling to me. The only reason that I can deal with Tootsie Rolls is because they are really malleable and good props for cake decorating and decorating cupcakes and stuff at Halloween. So I'm kind of like, all right, I understand that we just need Tootsie Rolls to a point. And I'm trying to think of, there's another candy that I always get weirded out by that I'm like, why is this still a thing? Oh, you know what? Good Bars, there's those bags of candy that are meant for Halloween, and they have one or two really good candies in them, but then they have stuff that's just kind of filler. And I don't dislike Good Bars because it's basically, those are just peanuts and chocolate, right? Which nothing wrong with that. But it is sort of a nothing candy bar. It's not like you go into a grocery store and in the candy section, they have Good Bars every time. There are certain candies that are standard that you're going to find. You're going to have your Snickers, your Reese's, your Milky Ways, Kit Kats, Twix, right? But if you finding a Good Bar, the likelihood not super high. And there are just some like that I'm always surprised that those even make it into these bags, because the other one is Three Musketeers, which, that came up in the first season of Stranger Things. I find Three Musketeers to be, it's not even that they don't taste bad. They're just super uninteresting. There's not a lot of texture happening there. They're just like a puff covered in chocolate, which, there are worse things. I just named many of them. But this creature that is after them is made of all of the rejected candy that the kids throw away at Halloween, at the end of Halloween. I love the fact that in the flashback about what is, what has caused this creature to turn into what it is, we see the same teenagers from the flashback of the old couple that owned that convenience store who were complaining about the kids dancing to rap outside their house. It's the exact same kids, and I just love that detail for some reason, that return to these the culprits, and this thing is all I wanted was for children to eat me, and now I eat them. And it's pretty great. I'm not gonna lie, the concept of rejected Halloween candy, its teeth are made out of candy corns. And the thing about candy corns is, low-key, I kind of like candy corns when I have just the one, because pretty much they're just vanilla-flavored sugar. And if you've ever, if you get the chance and there's candy corns, maybe there's a dish of them at work for decoration or something, and you're about to make a cup of coffee, do yourself a favor, and instead of using regular sugar, drop a couple candy corns in there. It adds this lovely vanilla flavor, and it's very subtle, but it sort of still feels oh, there's something about this. This is good. What is that? And that is what candy corns, in my opinion, are good for, is doing weird little things like that, or using them as decoration. I am living with a person who eats it by the handful. He will chow a full bag of candy corns. He'll feel disgusting and sick afterwards because that is just the hugest sugar dump into his system. But I never thought I'd meet a person who just straight up ate candy corn like that. It's just something I've never seen in my life. And so the fact that these are the reject candies makes total sense to me. But if he had been watching this episode with me, he would have just been like, what? Come on. Those are a classic. And I'm like, yeah, they're a classic because of how they look, not because of how they taste. Because I love the look of candy corns. Like, forget it. I love how candy corns look. When we get a little closer to Halloween, I'm really going to want like candy corn painted nails. I love how they appear. But let's be honest, there's not a lot going on. And the same with the candy pumpkins that are often mixed in with candy corns. Those candy pumpkins, I love them. They're so cute. They remind me of my grandma. She always had those. I'm not eating them though. They're adorable. I look at them. They're pretty, you know? But yeah, it's just Halloween candy is just so much fun. I just love talking about it and remembering all of the stuff that I'd be like really excited about when like houses that gave you full candy bars. Are you kidding me? Like you would just stampede over there because if you were in a neighborhood with other kids you knew, they would let you know. They would be walking away going, she gives out full bars, and you'd be like, fuck, and just head straight over there. And it was always just this big deal. Like apparently it's become a lot more common as people giving away full bars, which honestly, like I think it's much more awesome if only one or two places do it. But everybody wants to be the cool house. So, you know, and I don't know if you guys are as particular about the candy you give out as I am, but I don't buy those mixed bags because I just find that to be, there's always too many of the things I don't care about versus what I do. I like my bags to have a mix of Reese's peanut butter cups, Snickers bars, and Twix. I will have some Milky Way maybe. Twix are my kryptonite. And weirdly, Kit Kats. Both of those have like cookies and wafers in them. You put anything like that in chocolate and fuck it. I am going to just probably like fall asleep eating it. I will not stop until I physically can't eat anymore. So yeah, those are the ones that I would always get really excited about as an adult. As a kid, Reese's Cups all the way. That was all I wanted. I could have just had those for the entire night. And I love, they wind up finally getting away from this creature. At first, it looks like Seuss saved them because they're running away from it because they do not get to their 500 candies. They get close, but then fucking Dipper runs into Wendy and her boyfriend and tries to shove the wheelbarrow behind a couple of bushes, not realizing, this bug, not realizing that there's a cliff back there. And he shoves the wheelbarrow off the cliff and all the candy goes into a river at the bottom of the cliff and floats away. And everybody's very angry at him, which they should be. And they have to start over again, and there's no time. There's the local coot who's about to blow out the final candle, and they intimidate him into not doing it. They pretty much just confuse him into running away and leaving the jack-o'-melon outside. But then they all breathe such a sigh of relief that they accidentally blow it out anyway. So the trickster comes after them. Seuss drives through it, and it splits into a million pieces, and it seems like it's all over. But of course, Mabel has realized what Dipper did, and she won't even speak to him, and he feels really guilty, which he should. I'm just saying. But then they notice that all of the pieces that flew apart are beginning to move and come back together. And it turns back into this creature, which proceeds to eat Seuss. And it's explaining to them what it is before it, eats the rest of them. And then all of a sudden, it starts to, be like, wait, what is this? And its stomach starts to rumble. And all of a sudden, Seuss pops out of its belly and is chewing and is saying, oh, yeah, this is pretty good. And the creature's like, what? You think I taste good? And I love how Seuss isn't like, oh, yeah, you're super yummy. Seuss is just kind of like, I mean, yeah, I guess. Like, it's not, Seuss can't even lie and be like, yeah, this loser candy's super good. Seuss is just like, I mean, it's candy. I'm not mad at you. Like, I'm not super picky. It's kind of how I feel like Owen can be, honestly. And the Summerween trickster is so delighted that somebody has eaten this reject candy and likes it, that it like disintegrates with satisfaction at finally like being, you know, appreciated, essentially. It is pretty adorable, honestly. And I really love the fact that it chases them back into the Summerween store. And there's this whole like sequence of them hiding while they were trying to use costumes that are, you know, for sale to like pretend that they are just props or like displays rather than actual people. And Seuss is just literally this thing, this trickster is like crying in relief, and Seuss is like, yeah, that makes it a little weird, but whatever, and continues to like eat from like this creature as it just like sort of passes out. Meanwhile, the kid that it ate earlier, Gorney, pops out and just says, "I'm traumatized." Guys, I love this show. That's pretty good. And there has been this whole other thing going on with Grunkle Stan trying to scare these two kids who are unscarable because they've been watching horror movies since they were little kids, and there's just nothing that gets to them. And he does all these progressively more elaborate things, and none of them actually works. And they are determined to get their candy from him because he didn't even buy candy to give away, because all he wants is to scare the kids so bad that they flee. So they like come into the house to confront him and get their fucking candy that they came for, and they are determined. And when they come around the corner in the bathroom, he is like down to his boxer shorts about to get into the bathtub, and they see him and they scream and run away and drop their bags of candy. And he's like, "Nice, I've still got it." And I really loved that. I like that. It's such a weird little subplot, but I really enjoy that. And that's another thing that's in Trick or Treat, is an old man who just tries to scare the kids away. And he's like still doing like kind of a Halloween thing, but it's purely because he doesn't want to deal with the little kids. And it's great. Guys, watch Trick or Treat. So he gets these two kids. When they get scared and run finally, they leave their candy. So at the end, Mabel and Dipper get home, and they're both really sad because it's Halloween and they didn't get to actually eat any candy. Meanwhile, Wendy's here and she's carving a jack-o'-melon, and she doesn't give Dipper a hard time for going and trick-or-treating. Like, he obviously thought that she was going to, you know, just like rag on him. And instead she's just like, "Oh, were you? Yeah, the party kind of sucked, so whatever." Totally. And isn't this just the way you obsess over what somebody's going to say because you were doing XYZ? And when it finally comes down to it, it barely seems to register with them. And you were fucking obsessing over it like it was going to be the thing that broke their relationship with you, you know? And then it turns out they just don't really care. But yeah, Mabel and Dipper are able to get candy after all because these two kids dropped their bags. So it worked out really, really well. And I love that Dipper is wearing his peanut costume and just totally is like owning the fact that he did this. And maybe this will be the last trick-or-treating that they do, or maybe they'll actually do it at Halloween this year, proper Halloween. But I just love the moment where they're all sitting together in the living room and there's just a pile of candy on the floor and everybody's watching a scary movie. Like, this is just so perfectly the end of the evening on Halloween, right? And most people get pizza or something like that. And I'm really a fan of the whole aesthetic of this moment. And Stan saying this is a time of year when everybody gets together and celebrates what really matters, pure evil. And they all have a moment of laughing evilly, and then they stop. And Seuss just says, "I ate a man alive tonight." Which I'm like, that's not precisely what happened, Seuss. He said it wasn't a man. It was literally a being made of candy, so it's not. But, alright, if you want to put it like that, I guess, you know, you just sound like a literal psychopath, but go off, I guess. Melanie's commenting, the big hit here last year was Halloween gummies. Ooh, I kind of like gummy candy, depending. If it's too bouncy and I can't get my teeth through it, I find it really frustrating because those are, you wind up kind of having to just suck on them. You can't even chew them. But I love the real chewy ones that are almost like fruit snacks. Oh, love those. My favorite thing now is scaring the kids that come to the door. I wish we got trick-or-treaters. We don't get them here. We live at kind of a weird spot on the street where the street sort of ends and turns into like a weird, almost like an entrance to a yard for the, what do you call it? The railway that passes through. And people don't usually come to our end of the street. And it's such a bummer to me because like, if there were a way to set up somewhere else and hand out candy, I would absolutely do that. But nobody's going to take candy from a bunch of adults sitting in lawn chairs at a random spot on the street. But I would love to do it because I just think it's such fun. And when you see around here with the areas where they do a lot of trick-or-treating, it's always like the adults are sitting around drinking beer around a fire pit, handing out candy, sitting in their chairs. And it's like, looks like the most chill evening and super fun. And I just wish that we got that. But I don't think I've ever lived anywhere that got many trick-or-treaters. There was one year in Philadelphia where we got hit pretty hard and Brendan had to run out and get extra candy. But that was the only time since I've been a grown adult. And it's such a bummer to me. I miss it a lot. But anyway, so yeah, this was a super, super fun episode. And like I said, I understand why Melanie wanted me to cover this by itself because I have a whole lot to say about Halloween and I am just like about it. So thank you guys all so much for hanging out with me. I'm sorry that I started late, but it wound up working out, I think. And thank you again to Melanie for this commission. This was really fun. Perfect time of year to have this one fall in. And I hope you all enjoyed the episode. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.